This is a good old Siwash by George Fitch, and the story I'm reading tonight is Ole Skjærsson's first touchdown. I believe we've been reading this since 1911 when the book was published. When Bost came to Siwash, he succeeded a line of coaches who had been telling the fellas to get down low and hit the line hard, and had been showing them how to do it very patiently. Nice fellows, those coaches, perfect gentlemen, make you proud to associate with them. They could take a herd of green farmer boys with wrists like mules' ankles, and by Thanksgiving they would have them familiar with all the rudiments of the game. By that time, the season would be over, and all the schools in the vicinity would have beaten us by big scores. The next year, the last year's crop of big farmer boys would stay at home to husk corn, and the coach would begin all over again on a new crop. The result was we were a dub school at football. Any school that could scare up a good rangy halfback and a line that could hold sheep could get up an adding festival at our expense any time. We lived in a perpetual state of fear. Someday we felt that the normal school would come down and beat us. That would be the limit of disgrace. After that, there would be nothing left to do but disband the college and take to drink to forget the past. But Bost changed all that in 1 year. He didn't care to show anyone how to play football. He was just interested in making the player afraid not to play it. When you went down the field on a punt, you knew that if you missed your man, he would tell you when you came back that 2 stone hitching posts out of 3 could get past you in a 6-foot alley. If you missed a punt, you could expect to be told that you might catch a haystack by running with your arms wide open, but that was no way to catch a football. Now, maybe things like that don't sound jabby when 24 men hear them. They kept us catching punts between classes and tackling each other all the way to our dorms and back. We simply had to play football to keep from being balled out. It's an awful thing to have a coach with a tongue like a cheese knife swinging away at you, and to know that if you get mad and quit, no one but the dear old college will suffer. But it gets results. They use the same system in the East, but there they only swear at a man, I believe. Siwash is a mighty proper college, and you can't swear on its campus, whatever else you do. Swearing is only a lazy man's substitute for thinking anyway, and Bost wasn't lazy. He preferred the descriptive. He sat up nights thinking it out. We began to see the results before Bost had been tracing our pedigrees for 2 weeks. First game of the season was with that little old dinky normal school, which had been scaring us so for the past 5 years. We had been satisfied to push some awkward halfback over the line once and then hold on to the enemy so tight he couldn't run. And we started out that year in the same old way. First half ended 0-0, with our boys pretty satisfied because they had kept the ball in Normal's territory. Bost led the team and the substitutes into the overgrown barn we used for a gymnasium. And while we were still patting ourselves approvingly in our minds, he cut loose. "You pasty-faced, overfed, white-livered beanbag experts! What do you mean by running a beauty show instead of a football game?" he yelled. "Do you suppose I came out here to be an art director of a statuary exhibit? Does any one of you imagine for a holy minute that he knows the difference between a football game and ushering in a church? Don't fool yourselves. You don't. You don't know anything. All you ever knew about football, I could carve on granite and put in my eye and never feel it. Nothing to nothing against a crowd of farmer boys who haven't known a football from a duck's egg for more than a week. Bah! If I ever turned the old folks home loose on you doll babies, They had run up a century while you were hunting for your handkerchiefs. Jackson, what do you suppose the halfback is for? I don't want cloak models. I want a man who can stick his head down and run. Don't be afraid of that bean of yours. It hasn't got anything worth saving in it. When you get the ball, you're supposed to run with it and not sit around trying to hatch it. You, Saunders, you held that other guard just like a sweet pea vine. Where did you ever learn that sweet, lovely way of falling down on your nose when a real man sneezes at you? Did you ever hear of sand? Eat it! Eat it! Fill yourself up with it. I want you to get in that line this half and stop something, or I'll make you play left end in a fancy work club. Johnson, the only way to get you around the field is to put you on wheels and haul you. Next time you grow fast to the ground, I'm going to violate some forestry regulations and take an axe to you. Same to you, Briggs. You'd make the All-American boundary post, but that's all. And Vance, I picked you for a quarterback, but I made a mistake. You ought to be sorting eggs. That ball isn't real hot. You don't have to let go of it as soon as you get it. Don't be afraid nobody will step on you. This isn't a rude game. It's only a game of post office. You needn't act so nervous about it. Boss stopped for breath and eyed us. We were a sick-looking crowd. You could almost see the remarks sticking into us and quivering. We had come in feeling pretty virtuous, and what we were getting was a hideous surprise. Now, I want to tell this Tea Party something, continued Boss. You're going to go out on that field and score 30 points this last half? And I'm tired of coaching men that aren't good at anything but falling down scientifically when they're tackled. There isn't a broken nose among you. Every one of you will fall back 5 yards to pick up a soft spot to fall on. It's got to stop. You're going to hold on to that ball this half and take it places. If some little fellow from Normal crosses his fingers and says naughty, naughty, don't fall on the ball and yell down until they can hear it uptown. 30 points is what I want out of you this half, and if you don't get them, well, you just dare to come back here without them, that's all. Now get out on that field and jostle somebody. Get! Did we get? Well, rather. We were so mad our clothes smoked. We would have quit the game right there and resigned from the team, but we didn't dare to. Boss would have talked to us some more. And we didn't dare not to make those 30 points either. It was an awful tough job, but we did it with a couple over. We raged like wild beasts. We scared those gentle Normalites out of their boots. I can't imagine how we ever got it into our heads that they could play football anyway. When it was all over, we went back to the gymnasium, feeling righteously triumphant, and had another hour with Boston, which he took us all apart without anesthetics and showed us how nature would have done a better job if she had used a better grade of lumber in our composition. Well, that day made the Siwash team. The school went wild over the score. Bost rounded up 2 or 3 more good players, and every afternoon he lashed us around the field with that wire-edged tongue of his. On Saturdays, we played, and oh, how we worked. In the first half, we were afraid of what Bost would say to us when we came off the field. In the second half, we were mad at what he had said, and how he did drive us down the field in practice. I can remember whole cross-sections of his talk yet. Faster, you scows! Line up! Quick, Johnson! Are you waiting for a stonemason to set you? Snap the ball! Tear into them! Low, low, high! You end. Do you think you're the quarter pole in a horse race? 9 men went past you that time. If you can't touch them, drop them a souvenir card. Line up! Faster, faster! Oh, thunder, hurry up! If you ran a funeral center, the corpse would spoil in your hands. Wow! Fumble! Drop on that ball, drop on it! Hogboom, you'd fumble a loving cup. Use your hand instead of your jaw to catch that ball. It isn't good to eat. That's 4 chances you've had. I could lose 2 games a day if I had you all the time. Now try that signal again. Low, you lineman. There's no girls watching you. Snap it. Snap it. Great Scott. Say, Hogboom, come here. When you get that ball, don't think we gave it to you to nurse. You're supposed to start the same day with the line. We give you that ball to take forward. Have you got to get a legal permit to start those legs of yours? You'd make a good vault to store footballs in, but you're too stationary for a fullback. Now I'll give you one more chance. And maybe Hogboom wouldn't go some with that chance. But happy as we were, Bost wasn't nearly content. He had ideals. I believe one of them must have been to run that team through a couple of brick flats without spoiling the formation. Nothing satisfied him. He was particularly distressed about the fullback. Hogboom was a good fellow and took signal practice perfectly, but he was no fiend. He lacked the vivacity of a real first-class Bengal tiger. He wouldn't eat anyone alive. He'd run until he was pulled down, but you never expected him to explode in the midst of 7 hostiles and ricochet down the field for 40 yards. He never jumped over 2 men and onto another, and he never dodged 2 ways at once and laid out 3 men with stiff arms on his way to the goal. It wasn't his style. He was good for 2.5 yards every time, but that didn't suit Bost. He was after statistics. And what does a 3-yard buck amount to when you want 70-0 scores? The result of this dissatisfaction was Ole Skarsson. Late in September, Bost disappeared for 3 days and came back leading Ole by a rope. At least he was towing him by an old carpet bag when we sighted him. Bost found him in a lumber camp, he afterward told us, and had to explain to him what a college was before he would quit his job. He thought it was something good to eat at first, I believe. Ole was a timid young Norwegian giant with a rick of white hair and a reinforced concrete physique. He escaped from his clothes in all directions and was so green and bashful that you would have thought we were cannibals from the way he shied at us. Though, as that was the year of the bright hat ribbons came in, I can't blame him. He wasn't like anything we had ever seen before college. He was as big as a cart horse, as graceful as a dray, and as meek as a missionary. He had a double-width smile and a thin little old faded voice that made you think you could tip him over and shine your shoes on him with impunity. But I wouldn't have tried it for a month's allowance. His voice and arms didn't harmonize worth a cent. They were as big as ordinary legs, those arms, and they ended in hands that could have picked up a football and mislaid it among the fingers. No wonder Ole was a sensation. He didn't look exactly like football material to us, I'll admit. He seemed more especially designed for light derrick work. But we trusted Bost implicitly by that time, and we gave him a royal reception. We crowded around him as if he had been a Teddy Roosevelt capture straight from Africa. Everybody helped him register third prep with business college extras. Then we took him out, harnessed him in football armor, and set to work to teach him the game. Bost went right to work on Ole in a businesslike manner. He tossed him the football and said, "Catch it." Ole watched it sail past and then tore after it like a pup retrieving a stick. He got it in a few minutes and brought it back to where Bost was raving. "See here, you overgrown fox terrier," he shouted. "Catch it on the fly. Here." He hurled it at him. I ain't see no fly, said Ole, allowing the ball to pass on as he conversed. You cotton-headed Scandinavian cattle-ship ballast! Catch that ball in your arms when I throw it to you, and don't let go of it, shrieked Bost, shooting it at him again. All right, said Ole patiently. He cornered the ball after a short struggle and stood hugging it faithfully. Toss it back! Toss it back! Howled Bost, jumping up and down. You tell me to hold it, said Ole reproachfully, hugging it tighter than ever. Drop it, you mammoth cave of ignorance, yelled Bost. If I had your head, I'd sell it for cordwood. Drop it! Ole dropped the ball placidly. Das been fool game, he smiled dazedly. I ain't care for it. Any feller got a harmonica? That was the opening chapter of Ole's instruction. The rest were just like it. You had to tell him to do a thing. Then you had to show him how to do it. Then you had to tell him how to stop doing it. After that, you had to explain that he wasn't to refrain forever, just until he had to do it again. Then you had to persuade him to do it again. He was as good-natured as a lost puppy and just as hard to reason with. In 3 nights, Bost was so hoarse that he couldn't talk. He had called Ole everything in the dictionary that's fit to print, and the knowledge that Ole didn't understand more than 100th part of it and didn't mind that was wormwood to his soul. For all that, we could see that if anyone could teach Ole the game, he would make a fine player. He was as hard as flint and so fast on his feet that we couldn't tackle him any more than we could have tackled a jackrabbit. He learned to catch the ball in a night. And as for defense, his one-handed catches of flying players would have made a National League fielder envious. But with all of it, he was perfectly useless. You had to start him, stop him, back him up, speed him up, throttle him down, and run him off the field just as if he had been a close-coupled, next year's model scoot car. If we could have rigged up a driver's seat and chauffeured Ole, it would have been all right. But every other method of trying to get him to understand what he was expected to do was a failure. He just grinned, took orders, executed them, and waited for more. When a 220-pound man takes a football, wades through 11 frantic scrubs, shakes them all off, and then stops dead with a clear field to the goal before him because his instructions ran out when he shook the last scrub, you can be pardoned for feeling hopeless about him. That was what happened the day before the Muggeldorfer game. Bost had been working Ole at fullback all evening. He and the captain had steered him up and down the field as carefully as if he had been a seagoing yacht. It was a wonderful sight. Ole was under perfect control. He advanced the ball 5 yards, 10 yards, or 20 at command. Nothing could stop him. The scrubs represented only so many doormats to him. Every time he made a play, he stopped at the latter end of it for instructions. When he stopped the last time with nothing before him but the goal and asked placidly, "Where shall I take this ball now, Master Bost?" I thought the coach would expire of the heat. He positively steamed with suppressed emotion. He swelled and got purple about the face. We were alarmed and were getting ready to hoop him like a barrel when he found his tongue at last. "You pale-eyed prehistoric mudhead," he sputtered. "I've spent a week trying to get through that skull lining of yours. It's no use, you field boulder. Where do you keep your brains? Give me a chance at them. I just want to get into them 1 minute and stir them up with my finger. To think that I have to use you to play football when they are paying $5.50 for ox meat in Kansas City. Skajarson, do you know anything at all?" "I've been getting good education," said Ole serenely. "I think I've been college feller pretty soon. I don't know." I skall das understand all das hard words you make. You'll understand them? I don't think, moaned Bost. You couldn't understand a swift kick in the ribs. You are a fool. Understand that, muttonhead? Ole understood. Why for you call me fool, he said indignantly. I do yes what you say. Ah! Bubbled Bost, walking around himself 3 or 4 times. You do just what I say? Oh, of course you do. Did I tell you to stop in the middle of the field? What would Muggledorfer do to you if you stopped there? You won't tell me to go on, said Ole sullenly. I go on, I guess, pretty quick then. You bet you'll go on, said Bost. Now look here, you sausage material. Tomorrow you play fullback. You stop everything that comes at you from the other side. Here, you catch the ball when it comes to you. Here, and when they give you the ball, you take it. And don't you dare to stop with it. Get that? Can I get that into your head without a drill and a blast? If you dare to stop with that ball, I'll ship you back to the lumber yard in a cattle car. Stop in the middle of the field. Ah! But at this point, we took Bost away. The next afternoon, we dressed Ole up in his armor. He invariably got it on wrong side out if we didn't help him, and took him out to the field. We confidently expected to promenade all over Muggledorfer. Their coach was an innocent child beside Bost, and that was the reason why Ole was going to play. It didn't matter much what he did. Ole was just coming to a boil when we got him into his clothes. Bost's remarks had gotten through to his hide at last. He was pretty slow, Ole was, but he had been getting mad the night before and had kept at the job all night and all morning. By afternoon, he was seething, mostly in Norwegian. The injustice of being called a muttonhead all week for not obeying orders, and then being called a mudhead for stopping for orders, churned his soul, to say nothing of his language. He only averaged 1 English word in 3, as he told us on the way out that day that he was going to do exactly as he had been told or fill a martyr's grave. Well, only that wasn't the way he put it. The Muggledorfers were a pretty pruny looking lot. We had the game won when our team came out and glared at them. Bost had filled most of the positions with regular young mammoths, and when you dressed them up in football armor, they were enough to make a dreadnought a little nervous. The Muggleses kicked off to our team, and for a few plays, we plowed along 5 or 10 yards at a time. Then, Ole was given the ball. He went 25 yards. Any other man would have been crushed to earth in 5. He just waded through the middle of the line and went down the field, a moving mass of wriggling men. It was a wonderful play. They disinterred him at last, and he started straight across the field for Bost. I didn't mean to stop, Master Bost, he shouted. These fellows here, they squashed me down. We hauled him back into the line and went to work again. Ole had performed so well that the captain called his signal again. This time, I hope I may be roasted in a subway in July if Ole didn't run 25 yards with 4 Muggledorfer men hanging on his legs. We stood up and yelled until our teeth ached. It took about 5 minutes to get Ole dug out, and then he started for Bost again. Honest, Master Bost, I didn't mean to stop, he said imploringly. I just tell you, these fellows been devils. I fool them next time. Line up and shut up, the captain shouted. The ball wasn't over 20 yards from the line, and as a matter of course, the quarter shot it back to Ole. He put his head down, gave one mad bull plunge, laid a windrow of Muggledorfer players out on either side, and shot over the goal line like a locomotive. We rose up to cheer a few lines, but stopped to stare. Ole didn't stop at the goal line. He didn't stop at the fence. He put up one hand, hurdled it, and disappeared across the campus like a young whirlwind. "He doesn't know enough to stop!" yelled Bost, rushing up to the fence. "Hustle up, you fellas, and bring him back!" 3 or 4 of us jumped the fence, but it was a hopeless game. Ole was disappearing up the campus and across the street. The Muggledorfer team was nonplussed and sort of indignant. To be bowled over by a cyclone, and then to have said cyclone break up the game by running away with the ball, was to them a new idea in football. It wasn't to those of us who knew Ole, however. One of us telephoned down to the leader office where Hinckley, an old team man, worked, and asked him to head off Ole and send him back. Muggledorfer kindly consented to call time, and we started after the fugitive ourselves. 10 minutes later, we met Hinckley downtown. He looked as if he'd had a slight argument with a 13-inch shell. He was also mad. "What was that you asked me to stop?" he snorted, pinning himself together. "Was that a gorilla or a high explosive? When did you fellas begin importing steamrollers for the team? I asked him to stop. I ordered him to stop. Then I ran around in front of him to stop him, and he ran right over me. I held on for 30 yards, but that is no way to travel. I could have gone to the next town just as well, though. What sort of game is this, and where is that tow-headed holy terror bound for?" We gave the answer up, but we couldn't give up Ole. He was too valuable to lose. How to catch him was the sticker. An awful uproar in the street gave us an idea. It was Ted Harris in the only auto in town, one of the earliest brands of sneeze vehicles. In a minute more, 4 of us were in it, and Ted was chivying the thing up the street. If you've ever chased an escaping fullback in one of those Pioneer automobiles, you've got something coming. Take it all around, a good swift man running all the time could almost keep ahead of one. We pumped up a tire, fixed a wire or two, and cranked up a few times. And the upshot of it was we were 2 miles out on the state road before we caught sight of Ole. He was trotting briskly when we caught up with him, the ball under his arm, and that patient, resigned expression on his face that he always had when Bost cussed him. "Stop, Ole!" I yelled. "This is no marathon. Come back. Climb in here with us." Ole shook his head and let out a notch of speed. "Stop, you mullet head!" yelled Simpson above the roar of the automobile. Those old machines could rear some, too. "What do you mean by running off with our football? You're not supposed to do hare and hounds in football." Ole kept on running. We drove the car on ahead, stopped it across the road, and jumped out to stop him. When the attempt was over, 3 of us picked up the 4th and put him aboard. Ole had tramped on us and had climbed over the auto. Force wouldn't do. That was plain. "Where are you going, Ole?" we pleaded as we tore alongside him. "I don't know," he panted, laboring up a hill. "Das been full game, I think." "Come on back and play some more," we urged. "Boss won't like it you're running all over the country this way." Das been my orders," panted Ole. "I ain't no fool, gentlemen. I know when I been doing the right thing. Master Boss, he say, keep on running. I guess I run till hell freeze on top. I don't know why. Master Boss, he know, I think." "This is awful," said Lambert, the manager of the team. "He's taken Boss literally again. The chump? He'll run until he lands in those pine woods again. And that ball cost the association $5. Besides, we want him. What are we going to do?" "I know," I said. "We're going back to get Bost. I guess the man who started him can stop him." We left Ole still plugging north and ran back to town. The game was still hanging fire. Bost was tearing his hair. Of course, the Muggledorfer fellows could have insisted on playing, but they weren't anxious. Ole or no Ole, we could have walked all over them, and they knew it. Besides, they were having too much fun with Bost. They were sitting around on their blankets, and every 3 minutes, their captain would go and ask Bost with perfect politeness whether he thought they had better continue the game there or move it to the next town in time to catch his fullback as he came through. Of course, we are in no hurry, he would explain pleasantly. We're just here for amusement anyway, and it's as much fun watching you try to catch your players as it is to get scored on. Why don't you hobble them, Master Bost? A 50-yard rope wouldn't interfere much with that young Percheron of yours, and it would save you lots of time rounding him up. Do you have to use a lariat when you put on his harness? Well, fancy Bost having to take all that conversation with no adequate reply to make. When I got there, he was blue in the face. It didn't take him half a second to decide what to do. Telling the captain of the Siwash team to go ahead and play if Muggledorfer insisted, and on no account to use that 32 XX play except on first downs, he jumped into the machine and started for Ole. There were no speed records in those days. Wouldn't have made any difference if there were. Harris just turned on all the juice his old double-opposed motor could soak up. And when we hit the wooden crossings on the outskirts of town, we fellows in the tonneau went up so high that we changed sides coming down. It wasn't over 20 minutes till we sighted a little cloud of dust just beyond a little town to the north. Pretty soon we saw it was Ole. He was still doing his 6 miles per. We caught up, and Bost hopped out, still mad. "Where the Billy be blamed are you going, you human trolley car?" he sputtered, sprinting along beside Skazarson. "What do you mean by running up a game with the running it break? What do you mean by breaking up a game in the middle and vamoosing with the ball? Do you think we're going to win this game on mileage? Turn around, you chump, and climb into this car." Ole looked around him sadly. He kept on running as he did. "I ain't care to stop," he said. I can't suit you, Master Bost. You tell me I shall do a thing, and then you cuss me for doing it. You tell me not to do a thing, and you cuss me some more then. I think I just keep on running, like you told me to do last night. It ain't so hard being cussed when you've been running." "I tell you to stop, you potato top," gasped Bost. By this time he was 15 yards behind and losing at every step. He had wasted too much breath on oratory. We picked him up in the car and set him alongside Ole again. "See here, Ole, I'm tired of this," he said, sprinting up by him again. "The game's waiting. Come on back. You're making a fool of yourself." "Anything I do, I've been being fool," said Ole gloomily. "I just keep on running, fellas, and got breath to call me fool when I run. I think that's best way." We picked Bost up again, 30 yards behind. Maybe he would have run better if he hadn't choked up so on his conversation. In another minute, we landed him abreast of Ole again. He got out and sprinted for the third time. He wobbled as he did it. "Ole," he panted, I've been mistaken in you. You are all right, Ole. I never saw a more intelligent fellow. I won't cuss you anymore, Ole. If you'll stop now, we'll take you back in an automobile. Hold on there a minute. Can't you see I'm all out of breath?" "I been good feller, then?" asked Ole, letting out another link of speed. You are a peach, Ole," gasped Bost. "I'll never cuss you again. Please, stop. Oh, hang it, I'm all in. and Boss sat down in the road. 100 yards on, we noticed Ole slacken speed. "It's sinking through his skull," said Harris eagerly. In another minute, he had stopped. We picked up Bost again and ran up to him. He surveyed us long and critically. "Das bin queer machine," he said finally. "I think I shall be riding back in it. I ain't care for das football game, I guess. It's been too much running in it." We took Ole back to town in 22 minutes, 3 chickens, a dog, and a back spring. It was close to 5 o'clock when he ran out onto the field again. The Muggeldorfer game was still waiting. Time was no object to them. They would only play 10 minutes. But in that 10 minutes, Ole made 3 scores. 5 substitutes stood back of either goal and asked him with great politeness to stop as he tore over the line. And he did it. If anyone else had run 6 miles between halves, he would have stopped a good deal short of the line. But as far as we could see, it hadn't even winded Ole. Bost went home by himself that night after the game, not stopping even to assure us that as a team, we were beneath his contempt. The next afternoon, he was, if anything, a little more vitriolic than ever, but not with Ole. Toward the middle of the signal practice, he pulled himself together and touched Ole gently. "My dear Mr. Skrzarsson," he said apologetically, "if it will not annoy you too much, would you mind running the same way the rest of the team does? I don't insist on it, mind you, but it looks so much better to the audience, you know." "Ja," said Ole. "I been fool, I guess, but you been too polite to say it."